sadly cosmetic.
He just wanted
Oh
to.
yeah, cosmetic, skincare. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was just like, I can't breathe. I can't feed my. He never got to see his family.
No, yeah.
And he was never paying off his debt. He was just like, screw it. I'm just going to go
My
work.
neighbor's internal medicine. He's about the same age as me, 50. He's been in practice probably the same amount of years, 20, 25 years. He's still paying off his medical school debt. So his wife hates me. She's a nurse, and I have to work these extra hours. My husband can't pay our debt, and they see me because I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like taking it easy. I'm like, hey, we got to get Paul in regenerative medicine.
I like
But doctor,
He's
Dr.
totally.
Vinay, you look like 40s. You look like 40s. You don't look like 50s.
But he's bought the Kool-Aid. He thinks prescribing all the medications is taking care of his patients. I can't have a conversation because I'm totally opposite stems. He knows what I do. He doesn't understand how they work. Like, Paul, man, you gotta get go into regenerative medicine. You can be my medical director, but he's totally bought the Kool-Aid. Oh yes, the big pharma drugs is gonna help my patients. He knows they don't. And so he's probably stressed. So
yeah
it's just
They all are. American medicine has changed a lot, and it all became about the dollar bill. And a lot of your doctors, they're so in debt, they can't think, they can't function.
But Nick was talking about higher education. Well, you talk about millionaires. Well, if you're a celebrity like Lohan, you could pay USC to get your daughters in, bribe them, and it's probably been going on for decades. Finally, they're cracking down on that. But how many kids have gone through USC or Yale, whatever? They were paid off to get in, and they got their diplomas, not because they earned it in high school, because the school, they were bribed. I mean, they should take their degrees away and research. Hey, how did you get in school?
Yeah. But the thing is, your education is your brand. And speaking of brand, a guy who's got a great brand is Professor Snyder, who teaches at Yale University, right? Professor Snyder.
We were just talking about Yale.
The big brand in the United States and around the world.
You don't go to Yale, you don't.
And he teaches economics, and you were the former dean of the business school there, right, Professor Snyder?
Yes, and also, Nicholas, former dean at Chicago. I know you're a fan of Rex Sinkfield and David.
Oh, definitely, yes. So
I was there at Chicago. I sort of flunked the IQ test when it comes to dean jobs. A lot of people just say they're too hard, but I was fortunate enough to be dean at Chicago during that wonderful time period, as well as Yale until June 30th of last year.
Oh yeah. Did you know Rex? Because Rex and Booth founded DFA advisory funds years ago. I mean, they really hit the lottery big time. Then Rex went to St. Louis. He's big in the chess community. Everybody loves him because he donates a lot of money to the chess community. So
and his wife, Rex's wife, is it Mary? I can't remember.
I don't know his wife. I see Rex in the chess journals all the time. He even has the Sinquefield Cup, which he invites all the best chess players in the world every year. This year they may not have it because of the coronavirus, but for years he's had that. He sponsored the U.S. Championship. I don't know if you know what happened. In Seattle, where I was from, there was a group of people, Eric Anderson and a couple others, the Microsofties, that had the U.S. chess championship in Seattle. Then Rex brought it to St. Louis. Then Rex created one of the biggest chess centers in the world is actually in St. Louis. They have a big St. Louis chess center there. So he's made St. Louis the mecca of chess in the United States and frankly in the world because he used his funds there, where Booth took his money, just donated to the University of Chicago. I mean, that's kind of like they went different directions on that, but Rex is very well thought of in the chess cult and community, and they all know each other. So what took you to Yale? You left the great University of Chicago, the Milton Friedmans of the world, right? And then you went over to New Haven. What was the reason you went to Yale?
Well, the business school at Chicago had a unstated policy that dean should only be there for 2 terms. And that had been adhered to since World War II. And everybody was, happy, including myself. But nobody wanted to break the rule. And then I had the decision as to whether I should be a faculty member at Chicago and, not to downgrade myself. They had hired me to be dean. And as you know, I mean, the standard for economists at University of Chicago is very high. And I felt honestly a little uncomfortable. And I always knew that I was a better dean than I was a faculty member. So the Yale thing came up, and I really wanted to use that opportunity to take a brand and a position of a business school and say, okay, the world's moving to a place where the solutions don't just lie in government or in market economy or the social sector or profit. And Yale seemed to be a pretty cool place to push that. And I had a great time, but now I'm enjoying hanging out with you.
Yes.
Oh, well, that's a good thing, because then we hang out with the rest of the world. So that's a pretty good thing. Now, speaking about Yale and their brand, does Yale have a plan to make sure that their brand stays on top internationally? Because right now, education is international and scaled.
Yeah, so great question. My two objectives for the school were to make it distinctively global among U.S. business schools. And I was thinking, well, Yale's got this great brand, especially in China, but in a lot of places. And the business school really hadn't done much. And the other objective was to connect across campus. I think the question you just posed is being asked all around the country in all these different situations, with a special focus on China. And I think it's going to take some courage on the part of leaders in academia to basically decide if they want to stay the course. It's going to be tougher. My own view is education's really valuable in these kinds of tense times, and now's exactly the right time to continue investing in global education, even though it's going to be a lot harder. So I can't, I'm not in charge of anything anymore, but I have talked to 3 deans at other business schools who are absolutely committed to staying the course with global. But I'll just say one more thing. If you look at business schools, they've become very dependent on non-US tuition. So in the case of a school like Wharton or Chicago, where I used to be, it's a really tricky situation just in terms of the finances. I don't think any dean of any U.S. business school, when they were thinking about risk, said, oh, we might lose a lot of tuition-paying students because of visa issues. Wow.
Yeah, but the thing is also, if you go global, you have a bigger demographic group to choose from, because you have 7.8 billion as opposed to 330 million. So if you're looking for the best and the brightest people to go to the university, wouldn't you naturally be global as opposed to just domestic?
Exactly. And if we end up having schools shift to the domestic population, they're going to have to dig deeper. And then when, let's say that Yale gets a student who says yes from Indiana or California or wherever in the US, and then the person gets admitted to, say, Wharton, it's going to just cascade.
Right.
And the schools, if they're going to focus on the domestic audience, they're going to have to dig very deeply in terms of quality compared to what you just described.
Yeah,
where you're bringing the best and the brightest from all over.
Right. And then when you do bring them in, let me ask you about the curriculum, because it seems to me that the curriculum in the general education system is basically 19th century. And I think we're in like the 21st century. And do you guys actually create classes in some of the leading edge areas like fintech, which I found out to be a big area, cryptocurrency, which is a big area, some of the entrepreneurship, big area. Are there
Cybersecurity?
Cybersecurity is a big area. Is Yale designed to move as fast to these new areas? Like fintech, I was shocked to see how big fintech was. I went to a big fintech conference called Money 2020 in Las Vegas. 11,000 people showed up. As a matter of fact, that's where we met John Scully, right? Kim, who was the CEO of Apple Computer. He was investing in fintech. I was going.
And Apple Dell.
Oh yeah, we met. Was Adam Dell there also?
Michael and Adam.
Dell and Adam were there. So the thing is, fintech all of a sudden is this huge thing, and I'm going, what are you guys doing here? Has Yale moved their curriculum to stay with the things that are developing the 21st century, like fintech?
Can I tell a story as I get older? I like to tell stories.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes, please do. I love stories.
I remember getting to know Michael Dell a little bit. I invited him, and he didn't. He dropped out of college, so his highest degree earned is high school. And he deploys that line very well every once in a while, where somebody would ask him a really tough question, and he just says, "Well, I just can't tell you because I didn't learn that in high school." He's a very cool guy, but
you can afford to be very cool.
but this also goes to another thing, because we're just discussing entrepreneurship, which is also a big area, and I had applied to be on several universities' faculty as professor of entrepreneurship because I had bootstrapped 3 multi-million-dollar companies after the last 37 years. And I thought, well, I bootstrapped them, which is hard to do, by the way. I could tell you that, rather than do the venture capital thing, which unfortunately I don't have an education in that area. But they all wanted a PhD in entrepreneurship. And I said, wait a minute, I finished my JD and my LLM back in 1983. There was no PhD in entrepreneurships that were even available from 1983 till around 1996. By that time, I did all these companies. And then when I looked at the PhD in entrepreneurship, how can you be an entrepreneur and get a PhD in entrepreneurship? Because by definition, you're probably not an entrepreneur because you're a research guy. So how do you balance this?
People with PhDs and jobs in academics probably never sat down on the kitchen table and got out all the credit cards and added up all the lines of credit that they had and said, oh, should I actually draw all this stuff down and bet my personal credit, if not more, on that bootstrapping opportunity. But let me go back to your question about what academics are good at and how cutting edge are they. And the answer may disappoint you, but also confirm the reason why you asked the question. Typically, academics in business schools are good at one of two things: how individuals and teams and organizations work together, and leadership, sort of the inside the firm, inside the team stuff. And it's very classical psych-based education. And then the other thing that business schools are really good at are getting people, accountants, finance, economists, strategy people on how markets work. But the people that get into those jobs are classically trained psych or econ people. And it's hard for them to stay on the cutting edge. I would say a lot of schools do a pretty good job by bringing in non-traditional academics. But the other thing that goes a little bit beyond your question, but I think it's relevant. One of the things that people today really need to figure out is I don't have a good word for it, but it's complexity. And nobody can teach complexity, but I think you have to position yourself, whether you're at a business school or in any other realm, you have to position yourself where you connect with people outside your own individual space, whether it's function or geography, because the to be effective, you really have to adapt all the time. So I think some business schools have done a better job of being part of that flow where students are confronted with, say, global virtual teams, or working across campus, or actually getting in the field and having a capstone experience where they have to apply this stuff.
Mhm.
But when it comes to actual fintech courses and cutting edge stuff like that, I would give us a B,
Mhm.
but a B in something so important probably might be a pretty bad grade.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing is, there's another, obviously a big area in venture capital and crowdfunding. I mean, there's some interesting classes. Obviously, I would like to take on crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, and venture capitalists, because we have on Wednesday we have a startup group, and I found something very interesting working with the startups. They're a little more challenging than people would think, and mainly. Dr. Snyder, it's how they think, which you think they don't think like real business people do. Like some cases, they don't even show up. But venture capital becomes really important for their future. And are there any courses offered on venture capital and working with venture capitalists?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, and they're good ones. And, you beg, borrow, and steal. It turns out that Yale hired 4 really great finance people from Chicago during my time as dean. So, it's Chicago is very strong in those fields,
Sure.
but Yale is increasingly strong, and Yale's got a lot of good people in asset management broadly defined. In fact, one of the things that the school did recently was create a 1-year master program on asset management.
Really?
So, yeah. So,
wow.
Wow.
pretty strong.
Yeah,
That's
no,
pretty impressive. A lot of schools
that's very
don't.
impressive. And see,
Yeah.
I don't see Harvard, Yale, University of Chicago, or Stanford losing any ground to the school I teach at Northeastern anytime in the next decade, because
Northeastern is an amazing success story. It's
Mhm.
been documented, back probably 40 years ago. Northeastern was a commuter school.
Correct, right?
And
Yeah.
and it is now absolutely a powerhouse because it does what we just were talking about,
Sure.
taking the classical knowledge and then positioning faculty and students where they have to apply it in these clinics and workshops and field studies, and it's terrific.
Mhm. Yeah.
So being in Boston doesn't hurt either.
Boston is actually, when we did an analysis of the startup funds, and we live, at least I live in now. I used to live in Seattle, but my grandkids are here, so I live in the Raleigh-Durham area of Research Triangle Park. And I don't know, they tout Duke University, North Carolina State, all within about 10 miles of each other, and the Research Triangle Park. Okay, here's what they don't tell people: 40% of all venture capital is in Silicon Valley, 10% in Boston, Los Angeles, and in New York. Research Triangle Park, 0.075. That's it. In other words, Dr. Snyder, there's no money here. Which they don't tell the kids.
There's not only no money here, they don't teach you how to raise money here, and that's one of the reasons
I
why.
don't think you can.
But when I went out and raised my money, Nick, and I raised 134 million,
Yeah.
I didn't raise it here. I didn't get that money.
I don't think you can raise it here.
I got it West Coast, baby.
Right. You gotta go to Silicon Valley, or you gotta go to Boston.
And
or
you
you
gotta,
gotta go to
I
New York.
believe in an old-fashioned business plan. I hate these pitch decks. I hate
Right.
them. And if I were an investor today, and somebody just brought me a beautiful pitch deck, and they didn't have their business model together,
Mhm.
my ears close off. They just boom. Okay, great. You got a great video. I knew this one gentleman. I'm not putting him down. I thought it was very smart on his part, because a lot of investors, they buy that beautiful Hollywood made movie, but he had no product. He raised $30,000. He paid for a beautiful video of his product that didn't exist. It was awesome.
Here's the deal.
So
If what you're doing now, your widget, your product or service, if you're doing the same thing now as your next year, you're out of business.
Yeah, you got to pivot.
Exponentially. You have to adapt to this exponential environment, especially with the COVID. We change our business model by the day because there's new headlines coming out. We got to adapt, to the environment. Like the rapid testing, the antibody test. It's like FDA's like they give rapid approval. Okay, we could import these kits from China. Now they're like, oh, they're shutting down the import kits. You could only do it at a CLIA lab, a diagnostic lab. And they change the rules every day. So we're adapting, to the environments on a daily basis. If we put a pitch deck together or a video presentation, it's already obsolete by the next day, just like you are attuning to. So,
and then that's what irritates me right now is everything's pivoting so hard. But you got a lot of companies now that they're out of money, they're out of revenue. The stimulus did not pay the small businesses, like it said. I have had phone call and text after text. The stimulus didn't pay my company this, and they all got in the same time. And I'm like, they didn't pay me either. I put mine in on April 7th. I didn't get it. I have a confirmation number.
Mm-hmm.
And
hey, when Warren Buffett is down 50 billion and he dumped all the airlines, there's something already going on.
Warren, 50 billion. Did that even hurt him?
Really, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, but I heard he dumped all the airline stocks, and frankly, I can't.
But why would you?
Okay,
so the airlines aren't making money. We're the only country flying, and we're flying 50%, according to my friend in business. But why dump now? I mean, is it going to be that bad? Because
Warren, he sees the writing on the wall. Warren only invests things he understands. He drinks Coca-Cola every day. He eats McDonald's. He can understand that. I don't know if he understands the airline industry as much. I think he's seeing the writing on the wall. People are going to think twice of flying in the future, And he
he said it's going to be a while before they come back.
Like I'm not going to get in that spray machine. I mean, that's me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get in the spray machine.
Well, we have a solution for that, right? Yeah.
But I think that you're going to see something reverse here because people are going to have cabin fever. They're going to have been down a long time. They're going to recover some. And the first thing people do is they love to travel. They love to vacation. They love to spend their money they don't have. So I think the tourism we're going to see a rise in it.
Right. Eventually,
I think we are. I think October is not a good time to
Warren Buffett is looking at 2023 at the earliest for the airlines to come back to where they were today. So that's the reason he just dumped all the stocks, at least according to the reports that I'm aware of. Now, but education, which is also an interest of mine, Dr. Snyder, Professor Snyder, is Yale going to lose students, or are they going to have some problems? Are the classes going to be open? Are people going to be able to graduate? Or what are they doing right now in higher education? I try to read the Chronicle of Higher Education to keep up with it, but trying to keep up with everything is next to impossible. What are they doing at Yale in terms of getting students in the door? Are they going to have classes next year?
Yeah, short answer is I don't know. Harvard and Yale, I think, have both put out statements that say we're not sure if we're going to have in-person classes starting in the fall or not. Chicago put out this similar statement. I am actually chair of a network of business schools around the world. We have 31 members, 4 in Africa, multiple members in Latin America, a lot in Europe, China, Australia, etc., Canada, West Coast of the US. And we just did a survey about these kinds of questions. And everybody says they're not changing their degree portfolio. Everybody says we're keeping our enrollments targets where they were. So, if you think all of them are going to be able to do that, then I've got a bet for you.
Yeah, well, the thing is, when I started
on this, because we just had the board meeting in NC State, and I'm real proud of NC State because they did a lockdown turnaround, amazing. Like everything well, of course it's an engineering computer school. Everything switched over to online instantly.
Yeah,
Only the people who needed to get access to the labs, and they had to prove need of access. And they did this really quick and shifted. They've already taken the course that we're not going to have a physical graduation. They will do a march when things get better next year, that the people who want to march next year can, but everybody's going to get their certificate. But school's going to continue, but online. We're not going to do we made the decision, and we're going to do it starting in the fall. Everything's going to be online. Their only thing that they're working on is making sure that we still maintain international students, and they're working on that. But I'm real proud of what they did, the pace that they did to make this change. Like Dr. Yu said, in today's time, you got to be able to change by the minute.
So Ed, I have an idea for
By the
you.
time you hear me speak, it's obsolete,
I
right?
got the perfect idea. Okay, so I grew up in Michigan, right? I'm a Spartan. I went to Michigan State. Our nemesis is U of M, right? What U of M did right is they made U of M Flint campus, U of M Dearborn. So people who couldn't afford to go to the main campus in Ann Arbor, they would just go in Flint or Dearborn, and you get the same degree. Employers don't ask, which campus did you go to, right?
What's wrong with online education?
You make Yale University, the Beijing campus, you know?
True.
And you don't have to get a visa.
But what's wrong with online education? At Northeastern, where I teach, they developed the graduate tax program. I'm on faculty for 10 years now. When I started in Seattle and I live in Raleigh, but they developed the whole graduate tax program at Northeastern online 10 years ago. And the thing is, what's wrong with the online education? We've been doing it for a decade at Northeastern.
Well, the problem
I don't see any real problem with that.
Campus culture. That's the main thing. You develop your socialization skills. You join a fraternity or sorority.
Okay. But see, wait, Doctor, that's for the people that want to have fun at education. Okay,
No,
join your company club. If you want to have fun. But hardcore education, you can do it online.
Yeah, but then you're living with your parents. You're 20 years old. You got to get out in the world.
Well, and the thing is the biggest, Nick, you and I know this, the biggest part of success is networking.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to
you 4 years of your life, you don't worry about
Kim, I network online. I have 15,000 people I work with around the world on LinkedIn. I have 2,100 people that I work with in different companies. Oh, yeah, I met you personally. Okay, yeah, you have to do a certain amount of socialization.
All
Like
right.
North Carolina, High Point University. I think it's amazing with that.
We got a picture here.
We got a picture here. Yeah. Got to go check it out. Just a minute. What do we got?
Okay. Preface. The other thing that we learned from this survey is that faculty are embracing online. I mean, faculty and staff are stepping up at all these 31 business schools around the world. Now, what challenge or what opportunity or disruption does that create? This picture is my picture of the traditional education model. I call it the slice, not share model. So what I've tried to depict here is a quality pyramid. So it narrows at the top. And then what does an individual school like MSU or Northeastern or NC try to do? They try to get a slice of students high up in the quality pyramid. And it's the club. It's the, we're in this together. I want to become part of this group, these alumni. I want to interact with these faculty. But it limits the scale of individual schools. And it sort of gets reinforced by having most of the interaction on campus. But now it's major opportunity for schools that are willing to step out of this slice not share model and go for Yale campus Beijing, Yale campus Sao Paulo, Yale campus Bengaluru. We'll see.
Yale campus in New Delhi, right, Ankit?
We have a campus in Bangalore.
I mean, see, the thing is, the way I see Yale, they have the brand, they have the big lead, but just because you have the big lead doesn't mean you keep the big lead. As we know, a lot of the American companies like Blockbuster, how are they doing? Circuit City, they had a big lead. Just because you have the big lead doesn't mean you keep it, right?
Exactly. Like in medicine, you know, the general consensus is Harvard MDs buy their degrees. John Hopkins earns them. Yeah.
I didn't hear
Oh, no,
that.
I read more John Hopkins papers than I do
Oh
Harvard.
yeah, they're the ones that have the
I
map.
read more of their papers.
They update the map every day. It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, they're the ones I was reading during this COVID, you know, when we were entering into the COVID crisis. So you're right. I mean, it's just, it's a matter of how do we maintain the quality of education moving forward. And actually, my biggest concern is we have students that are graduating that are not going to have a job to go to this year. That's been my concern. See, nobody's really been addressing this. And I did address this at our meeting, but it's been on the back burner because we've just been trying to just maintain right now, right? We've been putting out the fires and maintaining, but nobody has considered that all of these students that are graduating this year, and I actually spoke at the PhD's luncheon, was very honored to be there because it was early, way early. But they're all graduating, no jobs to go to.
And there's a lot of students in universities that, oh, we want our tuition money back, you know, room and board, and we're not getting the live campus experience. Sure, you're giving online classes, but we should get a partial refund. And I think there's something to that, you know.
Well, there's going to be, and that impact on the universities as well, Edward. I mean, that's huge. Have you heard that in Yale? That's pretty interesting.
Well, Dr. Phillip is right. There's a lot of clamor around, we want partial tuition back. There are questions about, do people continue and work online towards their degree, or do they delay? And Kimberly, it ties into the question of, well, why rush? There's nothing out there in terms of jobs right now. So there's a lot of question marks in higher ed. Just to move back to last week, I think what we have, at least in a lot of economies, is a tale of two cities. There are people like me, fortunate. I'm among the 29% who can work at home and be reasonably productive. I mean, I like it. I may miss people and so on and so forth. But then there's, 60%, 51% of the U.S. workforce works for small and medium companies.
Exactly.
And we're heading to mass unemployment.
Yes. I mean, well, it's not heading. We're there.
Yeah. So it's just I'm sort of segueing into the economics. I did want to tell you one more Nobel Prize economist.
Oh, wow.
Remember last week I told you about this guy, Charles Thibault, even though I misspelled his name. It's Tiebout. He's the guy who said competition within a country is good. And we're about to run 50 plus statewide experiments about how to open up the economy. And over time, people match up between policy approach services and, okay, I'm willing to live there and be a taxpayer. So that's Charles Thibault. The other Nobel Prize winner I wanted to bring into the conversation today is Herbert Simon. Simon, University of Pennsylvania guy, and he wrote a lot on a topic that became identified as bounded rationality. And he wrote a book back in the 1940s on administrative behavior, and basically said people can only keep up with so much information and make so many decisions, and then they just reach their logical limit. And then in 1972, he wrote a book called Human Problem Solving. So why do I bring Simon into this? I think that we have to realize that these government top-down lockdowns are blunt instruments, And they really don't, in my mind, match the problem of how do we actually open up the economy, which is so detailed and multidimensional. And right now, I think the country and the states have a big, sort of fork in the road. Do we use very simple, this is essential, you're in this county, that's all that can be open, or do we put out more general information and let individuals exercise their judgment about how to open up, the gym and the barber shop and the software company and the restaurant and so on and so forth?
And that's a good question, because there's right now, some places are allowing people to open, and there are a lot of people going, hey, why do they get to open and I don't? We saw that happen here, where they allowed one of the hobby shops to stay open, but the other one had to close. And it had nothing to do with operating or anything. Huh?
I grew up in Detroit, right? So, and I read people are losing their job. The economy is a mess there anyways, regardless of COVID. So people are losing their jobs. They can't pay their water bill. You know what the city did? They shut the water down for not paying their, and I'm like, this is the Great Lakes state. We have the largest fresh water supply. You could give it away. I mean, no wonder why they stormed the Capitol. And I think they had every right to. Hey, look, our right to conduct trade, freedom of speech, the First Amendment rights are taken away.
Small business.
Crazy.
Well, what I think is our leaders are not thinking about taking care of the people. They're thinking about taking care of themselves.
Well, yeah, all these Congress
that needs to stop.
they're affecting their agendas, and they make the wrong decision, get criticized. They're going to boot it out of office.
You can't be criticized for being too strict, and I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Anything that happens,
it's on them.
That's COVID related, you're going to be blamed for, but you're not going to get credit for getting the economy going and helping people have healthy and safe lives and get on, because that's not what's on people's minds. But people
don't realize there's going to be just as much as more deaths of people getting depression because they're unemployed, stuck in their homes, domestic violence, child abuse, drugs and alcohol, stress, heart attacks from being stressed out, from being in your cave, lifestyle-related illnesses that it's going to surpass what COVID is causing. And the bottom line is, if you have a healthy immune system, you're good to go out. The solution is Korea, where my parents is from. They have mass testing, and if you're positive, you self-quarantine. Right? If you're negative, you build the antibodies, you got immunity, you can go out and conduct business. And now they're opening up the country, and they're still testing. Every gas station, there's the test. And that's how they're flattening the curve. But Korea it's a small country. It's easier. I know America's it's bigger, but still it's a proven model,
Dr. Phillip, here's my fact question, and anybody can answer it on the panel. I checked the CDC website. So if you take people who are 24 and younger in the United States, at the time, 65,000 people had tragically passed due to the disease. But if you focus on the population 24 and under, what do you think the number of deaths was as of a couple days ago? What's your over under?
I would say definitely under 20, probably under 25. I think it was minuscule, but I'm not really sure.
Gosh, Nicholas, you're good. It turns out it was over 50, but under 100.
Over 50, under 100. Yeah, because the thing is, it really affected older people with pre-existing conditions. If you got rid of everybody over age 60, for example. So unfortunately, I would have to kiss everybody goodbye. That this would not be really a disease that people would look at.
But they know that it's killing younger people too.
Yeah, it's real. Yeah, but it's very rare. See, it does kill younger people, but it's really rare. But as you get older with pre-existing conditions, that's where it goes off the charts.
But yeah, but
and there's one more data.
Going to Dr. Phillips' point, age 25 to 54. That's my last question. I wanted to make sure everybody had a shot at that one.
Mm-hmm.
Out of 65,000 deaths, aged 25 to 54, these are data that the former dean of Kennedy School, Graham Allison, talked about the other day. So I'm not bright enough. I'm not going to take credit for his question, but how many deaths in that age group out of 65,000 in the U.S.?
Yeah, can you guys see the screen?
Yeah, see, I can't get to my computer quick enough to cheat on this one, so I figure maybe it's about 600 or 700. I don't know though.
Yeah, so it was 2,700.
2,700, a lot more. Well, I'm doing too big on the under.
But still, I mean, isn't the point that Dr. Phillips is right about if you're healthy and young?
Yeah.
Your risk of mortality is really low. Now, maybe you get sick, maybe you have to go in the hospital, but if you don't have a pre-existing condition, 2,700 people out of a country of 330 million. So, but nobody in government is talking about getting back to work using that information. At least I'm not aware of it.
Well, but we're talking about it on our show. Unfortunately, our show is globally. And one of the things that we talk about is just building your immunity and letting that be part of your getting back to work, right? And Dr. Yu has been bringing this up on a daily basis. Get out, get that sunshine. Dr. Art, same thing. If you want to sanitize your stuff, throw it in the sunshine. The sunshine is the best cure, not cure, but the best way to fight this, your immunity. And that's something that they didn't allow us to do over the years. They actually our better foods for us cost so much more. People were buying the junk food like Nick. Nick buys it because he likes it. Okay, I'm just going to tell you the truth. You got to have a case of Coke with Nick when you go on a set with him. But one of the things I believe is that our government needs to be cleaned out. All right. If we're doing a reset button, I think it's time. And, Jefferson said this, there just comes a time that we need to refresh our government, even with the blood of the patriots and the tyrants. For some reason, I go back to this speech occasionally because if we want to preserve our liberties, but actually, I think what he meant was preserve our health, right? Preserve the part which is wrong will be discontented in proportion to the importance of the facts. They misconceive the facts. So I'm just saying, occasionally we just have to clean out our government. And
listen, I don't listen to dead people 200 years ago. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people like to worship them, but I just don't buy it. This is the 21st century, not the 16th and 17th century. So whatever the quote forefathers said, great for the history books, but not looking forward. Now, looking forward, I do have some questions for Professor Snyder. This is very important. It's economics. Okay, we claim that China's communist, but how can they be? And the economy really bothers me. How can they be a communist country? So how can they be a communist and have the second most amount of billionaires in the world? Are they communist or not? That's what
I was in Beijing in 2008 during the Olympic Games because I was treating the athletes there, and what boggled my mind was.
Well, he froze up, but I didn't freeze up. Dr. Snyder, what's going on here? How can they be communists and have the second most?
Everyone has their own business there. Yeah. They're conducting. You don't know it's a communist country at all.
Well, is it or isn't it? I mean, you can't be both. You can't be communist. I mean, everything in economics doesn't make sense. People say, well, socialism is bad. They point to Venezuela and Cuba. Then they say socialism is good. They point to Sweden and Denmark. So which is it? I mean, I don't really care, but how can you be an economist and figure this stuff out? I don't get it. So since you're an economist, you figured it out, Professor Snyder. How do we explain all this stuff?
Okay, yeah. it's a communist party-run country, but I don't view it as a communist-style economy at all. And probably of all the places that I've traveled, China's been my number one. I have a great deal of respect for what they've achieved. I'm not an expert on China, but I think one of the answers to your question, Nicholas, is the personnel committee is part of virtually every organization in China. And they keep track of the people, but then the people can run their businesses. So that's how I think about it. You got to play by the rules to some extent, but China's great at also just sort of, well, we know you're violating the rules, but we're going to let you go and see how it turns out. So they're extraordinarily adaptive and practical, going back to Deng Xiaoping and Confucian thought. So I think of them as market-oriented. They've got the Communist Party exercising control through the personnel committees throughout the economy, and incredibly adaptive and industrious.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay. So you basically now, but then how do you make the argument when I hear people say socialism is good? Look at Denmark. Look at Sweden. Socialism is bad. Look at Venezuela and look at Cuba. So which is it? Is it good, bad, or what's going on here? How do you? I can't get my head around those two things.
Well, I share your question. I mean, I'm a free market guy.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that one of the pillars that has made the United States great, and even countries like Sweden have figured it out. They've moved towards more individual responsibility and entrepreneurship and innovation and enterprise-oriented thinking. I think that has to, and I see it in China too. I think that's the pillar that I personally value a lot, and I'm very skeptical of any top-down planning.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't work.
Right. And so the thing is, the free market economy does tend to have the better results. I mean, I guess if you looked at worldwide, because what happens is that Russia even broke down and created free markets and did a lot better. So did China. And from what I've seen, it seems to make more sense. But also, here's what I see about the quote free market people. The fact is they work hard. I mean, the thing is, they're given an opportunity and then they work really hard at it. And the real problem that I've seen with the quote social programs is that they don't work hard. In other words, they're basically disincentive pay, which just came out. Apparently, this new program, our new $2.2 trillion bailout. Some people get more on unemployment than they do for work. And I fell out of my chair. I said, what? Of course that's a disincentive because it was a flat. I didn't know it was this much. I would have got
happening to our corporation. The majority of my staff, they don't want to come back. Oh, we're getting paid like $600 a month. Why would we come back? They don't realize it's only a few months they get this unemployment.
Come on.
Yeah.
You're getting $600 plus your unemployment not to work. I thought I should have got a job and then got on unemployment, and I would have been more than happy not to work. But I think the problem is this was passed so quickly. Rather than it being $600 a week, it should have been 50% of your unemployment in your state. Because here's the facts. In Boston, I'm glad this program was online. In Boston, to live up there, I looked at moving to teach there. I'm going, it is expensive to live in Boston. North Carolina, cheap. Okay, and the unemployment is different there, but they're treating it the same. So the person in North Carolina is getting $600 a week more plus their unemployment, which is a lot more money than it is in Boston. And so when they made it a flat $600 a week rather than a percentage of your unemployment from your state, it messed everything up. So people in Mississippi go, hey, I just won't work. And I go, I can't blame you.
Herbert Simon, human problem solving. There are limits. You can't let the government make these decisions all the time. They're just going to mess it up.
Lord.
Going back to Dr. Phillip, you mentioned you were from Korea, or your family's from Korea.
Yeah.
And let's just remember, we've run these multi-decade experiments. We have North Korea, we have South Korea. I think before the split, North Korea was as wealthy as South Korea. We ran the same experiment in Germany. East Germany was slightly wealthier than the West. But, over time, which system works best? Markets.
Yeah.
And I'm worried that we're just going to forget these basic lessons and mess up everything.
Right.
Yeah. So the only employees that stuck around, and they even got their unemployment, they volunteered to work because they know in the future, when unemployment's over, they'll have a company to come back to. Those are the A players.
Yeah.
They're hard to find in the U.S.
Hard to find.
Most millennials are entitled. Oh, I showed up. I deserve a paycheck. No, you got to work for it. I built this company for my own hands, and they don't understand. We're sticking our necks out, but these few employees that stayed on, I'm proud. In tough times, your A players will shine. And I'm like, well, COVID did me a favor. It got rid of these underperformers, and now you can hire an A player cheap because everyone's looking for a job. So, yeah.
Or you find your A players and you find out that they work more efficient. Many years ago when I opened up a phone company, my employees were so efficient that the other phone companies were having to send their employees to typing classes because we could provision twice as fast as they could. But I would have half the employees. But you find that they're more efficient, so you can pay them more. You have fewer, and you pay them more, and then you have your quality. You have the cream of the crop. So there's various ways to look at it, and but it's like you said, this is allowing you to. It's a bad way to do this, though, and I think that there's got to be a better way that we could have helped the people without the.
The thing is, to get me, it was simple. All you do is it's a percentage of your unemployment compensation, and see that's the problem with our wonderful federal government. They make one rule that fits everybody, and it doesn't fit everybody. So the minute they made that one rule,
Fix your connection.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. So Nick, to answer your question, well, is socialism a better model than capitalism? North Korea is like the extreme. You got extreme fascism. The dictators. He's told.
Are you there?
Korea, which is complete capitalism. And I think that's the answer. Yeah, the North Koreans are being fed a grain of rice a month, but most of them are starving. But South Korea, it's capitalism. It's a wealthy country now. They built themselves from poor farmers after the Korean War, and now they're like a global behemoth, Hyundai, TVs, cell phones. It's amazing what that tiny country did in half a century, because of capitalism. Yeah.
So it's are y'all hearing a lot of static?
Yeah, it's kind of like a robot.
It's very weird.
Yeah.
Is it? I'll let the technician know.
But Ed, you have to know Dr. John Connolly. He was the former dean of medical school at New York University. You know John? Well, I know you guys know him. So when you're in an airplane and you go through the magazine, the top doctors, and they'll feature a doctor, right? That's his magazine, Dr. John Connolly. And so it's kind of funny how he was a dean, but he also had a side business as an entrepreneur, and he made this magazine in all the airlines, Top Doctor. And they may be a good physician, but the reality is you're paying to be in the magazine and as a top doctor. So yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, but isn't that what entrepreneurship is all about?
Exactly. Yeah.
In other words, the thing is, it's all about making changes. Do we have a static on this, Kim? Maybe it's her. I'm okay. Dr. You seem okay, and.
I was talking like a robot earlier, but
oh, you were okay. Yeah. Well, the internet is not 100% yet, but it certainly has improved a lot since we started doing